The station was called Verak 9. It floated in deep space like a giant metal island. Ships came and went every hour. Traders, soldiers, hunters, and travelers from dozens of worlds passed through its long corridors every single day. Verak 9 was not a peaceful place. It was loud. It was rough. It smelled like fuel and strange food and the sweat of 100 different species. But it worked. Every kind of being found what they needed here: supplies, information, or trouble. Then on this particular day, a small transport ship docked at Bay 14. It was not a fancy ship. It had scratches on its hull and one of its landing lights was broken. Nobody gave it a second look. Ships like that came in all the time. But the being who stepped off that ship was not like anything that had walked through Verak 9 in a very long time. Her name was Mara Voss. She was human. That alone was enough to make a few heads turn. Humans were rare on Verak 9. Most humans stayed in their own systems, in their own little corner of the galaxy. They did not often wander this far out into deep space. The ones who did were usually traders or diplomats, and they always looked nervous. They walked fast, kept their eyes down, and tried not to bother anyone. Mara did not do any of those things. She walked slowly. Her boots made a steady, heavy sound on the metal floor. She was not tall, not by the standards of most species on the station. She was of average human height, lean, with short, dark hair and pale skin marked by old scars. She wore simple clothes, dark pants, a worn jacket, and a belt with several tools and a short blade on it. Nothing about her looked expensive or impressive. But something about her was different. The first ones to notice were the Kreth. They were a predator species, big and scaled, with wide, flat heads and yellow eyes that could see in complete darkness. There were 3 of them standing near the entrance to the main corridor, talking among themselves. When Mara passed them, one of the Kreth stopped talking. His yellow eyes followed her. Then slowly, almost without thinking, he took one step to the side. Just one step. He moved out of her path without her asking. His 2 companions looked at him. He didn't say anything. He didn't know why he had done it. He just had. Mara did not even glance at them. She moved into the main corridor. Verak 9's main corridor was the busiest part of the station. It was wide enough for 10 beings to walk side by side, and it was always packed. There were market stalls on both sides, selling everything from food to weapons to stolen data chips. The noise was constant. Voices in dozens of languages, machines humming, music from somewhere deep in the market. The corridor was full of all kinds of beings. Some were prey species, smaller, gentler creatures who lived by being careful and quick. But the Feli were there, small rabbit-like beings with large ears and soft gray fur. A group of movie, thin and long-limbed with huge dark eyes, moved in a tight cluster as they always did. Prey species traveled in groups on Verak 9. It was safer that way. And there were predator species, too. The Harak, wolf-like and tall with long snouts and sharp teeth. The Drev, insect-like hunters with hard shells and clicking mandibles. And the Urlak, perhaps the most feared species on the station. Massive, dark-furred beings with 4 arms and the kind of presence that made other beings go quiet. The corridor was full. There was barely room to walk. But as Mara moved through it, something happened. It was small at first. A Harak trader standing in the middle of the path with his back turned, shifted to the side before she even got close. An Urlak female who had been blocking half the corridor stepped back against the wall. Not because anyone told her to. Not because she was afraid, exactly. It was something else. Something older than thinking. Her body simply moved before her mind could decide. Mara walked on. She did not hurry. She did not push. She did not even make eye contact with most beings she passed. She simply walked, and space opened up in front of her like water parting. A small Feli near one of the market stalls watched this happen. Her large ears were pressed flat against her head, which was what Feli did when they were very alert. She had been on Verak 9 for 3 years, and she had never seen anything like it. Predators moved for very few beings. They moved for those who were bigger. They moved for those who had power or weapons or a large crew behind them. They did not move for a single quiet human woman with no visible weapons beyond a short blade. But they were moving. The Feli watched Mara stop at a water station near the center of the corridor. Mara filled a small flask, capped it, and put it back on her belt. And then she looked up and around, scanning the corridor with calm, steady eyes. For just a moment, the Feli felt the full weight of that gaze sweep past her. It was not a cruel gaze. It was not threatening. But it was aware. Completely, totally aware. Those eyes had seen everything around her, every exit, every being, every possible danger, before most creatures had finished blinking. The Feli let out a slow breath. She had grown up being told that humans were soft, weak, that they were one of the prey species of the galaxy even if they didn't know it. Small creatures, short-lived, with no natural armor, no natural weapons, no claws or scales or venom. Easy targets. Standing here now, watching this woman, the Feli thought that whoever had said that had never met this particular human. Mara finished her scan of the corridor and moved on. She had a destination. She was heading to the lower level of the station to a place called the Hollow, where information was bought and sold and no one asked questions. She had been traveling for 11 days, and she needed 3 specific things: a map, a name, and a reason to stay on Verak 9 for a while. She had almost reached the lift when a door opened on her right and a very large Urlak male stepped out directly in front of her. He was enormous. He had to bend his head to fit through the doorway. His 4 arms were crossed over his wide chest, and he looked down at her with black eyes. But he did not move. For a moment, nothing happened. The beings nearby went still. A fight between a human and an Urlak lasted about as long as it took to blink. Mara looked up at him. Her face was calm. She did not step back. She did not reach for her blade. She just looked at him with those steady, quiet eyes, and she waited. Something shifted in the Urlak's black eyes, something uncertain. Then, slowly, he moved aside. Mara walked past him without a word. The lift doors opened, and she stepped inside. As the doors closed behind her, she finally allowed herself a small breath and rolled her left shoulder once, quietly working out a pain that had been there for days. She had a lot of work to do on this station. She hoped it would not take long. It would take much longer than she thought. The Hollow was exactly what the name suggested. It sat in the lowest part of Verak 9, beneath the engine rooms and the water recycling systems. And the ceiling was low, and the lights were dim, and everything smelled like old metal and something burnt. The beings who came here were not the kind who wanted to be seen. They sat in corners, spoke in low voices, and kept their hands where they could move fast if they needed to. Mara walked in and found a table near the back wall. She always chose the back wall. She sat down, put her back against it, and faced the room. Old habit. Good habit. Not a small serving machine rolled over, and she ordered hot water and something with protein in it. The machine didn't care what species she was. It just took her credit chip and rolled away. That was one thing she liked about machines. While she waited, she looked around the room. There were about 20 beings in the Hollow. She counted them without making it obvious. A pair of Drev in the corner, their mandibles clicking softly as they spoke. A Harak male sitting alone, drinking something dark, looking at nobody. Several beings she didn't recognize. New species or species she hadn't studied yet. She filed their shapes and movements away in her memory. Size, posture, where their eyes pointed, whether their weight was forward or back. She did this automatically, the way other people breathed. Near the bar, there was a movie group. 5 of them, bunched together, taking up very little space as movie always did. And their big dark eyes moved constantly around the room. Prey species rarely relaxed, even indoors, especially indoors in a place like the Hollow. One of the movie noticed Mara watching and froze for a second. Then, to Mara's mild surprise, the movie gave a very small, very quick nod. It was the kind of nod that said, "I see you. I know what you are." Then the movie looked away. Mara filed that away too. The food arrived. She ate it slowly, not because she wasn't hungry, but because eating slowly let her keep watching the room. She was waiting for someone. His name was Doss, and he was a Felly information broker who worked out of the Hollow 6 days out of 7. She had been given his name by someone she trusted, back in a station 2 systems away. She had been told Doss knew everything about what moved through this part of space. Ships, cargo, people, and, more importantly, secrets. She was halfway through her food when the Felly arrived, and she knew immediately it was him. He was older than most Felly she had seen, with gray-white fur and ears that had small notches in them, old marks from old trouble. He moved through the room in the careful, reading way that prey species used, checking everything, touching nothing, always knowing where the exits were. He was very good at it. She was better. He found her table before she waved him over, which meant someone had already described her to him. He sat down across from her, unfolded his small hands on the table, and looked at her with bright, steady eyes. "You're the human," he said. His voice was soft and quick, the way Felly always spoke. "Mara Voss," she said. "I know the name." He paused. "I didn't believe the stories." "What stories?" Doss tilted his head a little. His ears moved, which was how Felly showed mild amusement. That a human woman was traveling alone through the outer systems. That she had been through Kesh Station, Portfall, and the Drev breeding grounds on Mako 7. He paused again. "And came out of all 3 without a scratch." "I have scratches," Mara said. "I just keep them covered." Doss looked at her for another moment, then made a sound low in his throat that might have been a laugh. "What do you need?" "A map of the restricted cargo routes between here and the Outer Veil. A name. Someone who can authorize passage through the Urlak territory checkpoint at Grid 6. And," she said, I need to know who on this station is working for the Syndicate." The Hollow got no quieter. Nobody nearby had heard her. She had spoken softly enough. But Doss went very still for a moment, and his ears pressed flat. "That last one," he said quietly, "is a very dangerous thing to ask." "I know. The Syndicate has people everywhere, on every station, in every market." "I know that too." Doss studied her. "Why are you looking for them?" Mara picked up her cup of hot water, drank from it, and set it back down. "They took something from me. I want it back." "What did they take?" "That part isn't your business," she said without being unkind about it. "Your business is the 3 things I asked for. Name your price." Doss was quiet for a while. His bright eyes moved over her face like he was reading a map. Then his ears came back up slowly. "The cargo route map, 200 credits. The name for Grid 6, 400. The Syndicate question." He stopped. "On how much?" "It's not about how much," he said. "That question gets answered differently. I'll give you what I know, but not here and not tonight. Come back tomorrow before the morning shift change. Come alone and come quiet." He looked at her steadily. "And if anyone asks you who sent you to me, the answer is nobody. You found me yourself." Mara nodded once. "Fine." She paid him for the map and the name right then, in hard credits, no data trail. He handed her a tiny chip no bigger than her thumbnail. She pressed it into her palm scanner and felt the data transfer complete in 2 seconds. She palmed the chip back to him, and he made it disappear. He stood up to leave, but then he stopped. He looked at her one more time with those bright, careful eyes. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "You can ask." "When you came through the main corridor today," he paused. I heard about it from 3 separate people before you even arrived here. The Urlak at the lift, the Harak in the market, the Kreth at the entrance. He tilted his head slightly. How do you do that? Mara looked at him calmly. Do what? Make them move, he said. Make the big ones step aside. You're human. You're not large. You don't have a crew with you. You haven't threatened anyone. And yet, his ears shifted. They move. Mara was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I don't make them do anything. I just walk like I've already decided where I'm going and that nothing is going to stop me. The rest of it, she paused. I think some things are older than thinking. Their bodies feel something and react before their minds catch up. Doss considered this. What do their bodies feel? Mara picked up the last piece of her food and ate it. Ask them, she said. Doss left. Mara stayed at her table for another 20 minutes, finishing her water and watching the room. She was thinking about the syndicate, about what they had taken, about how long she had been following the trail and how many dead ends and wrong turns it had taken to get here. Verak 9 was the closest she had been in 8 months. She could feel it. Near the bar, the group of movie were getting ready to leave. As they filed past her table, the one who had nodded at her earlier stopped for just a second. Close up, Mara could see that this movie was female, young, with a thin scar on her chin. And the movie looked at her and said very quietly in badly accented human speech, Be careful. Station is watched tonight. Then she moved on with her group and was gone. Mara looked at the door for a moment after they left. Then she put her cup down, adjusted her belt, and stood up. She had a room on level 3. She would sleep a few hours and be back at the hollow before the morning shift. She walked out of the hollow and back into the low corridors of the station's belly. Now the lights down here flickered every few seconds. Somewhere in the walls, pipes groaned. She kept her eyes open and her steps quiet, and she thought about prey animals giving warnings. That was new. That hadn't happened before. Something was changing on this station since she had arrived. She didn't know yet if that was going to help her or complicate things. Probably both. She did not sleep well. That was normal. She had not slept well in 8 months. But not since the day she had come back to her ship and found it empty. She slept in short pieces. An hour here, an hour there. Always with one part of her mind still listening. Old soldiers slept like that. She had never been a soldier, not officially. But the years had made her something close enough. Her room on level 3 was small and clean. That was all she needed. She lay on the narrow bed with her jacket on and her blade within reach, and she let herself rest while part of her mind sorted through everything she had gathered in the last few hours. The cargo route map was already memorized. She had gone through it twice on her palm scanner before she slept. The route she needed ran through 4 checkpoints between Verak 9 and the Outer Veil. 3 of them were standard. Credits would open those. The 4th, at Grid 6, was the problem. The Grid 6 was Urlak territory. The Urlak did not take credits from strangers. They required sponsorship, a name that vouched for you. Without that name, no ship passed Grid 6. Ships that tried were boarded, searched, and often not returned. Doss had given her the name. She turned it over in her mind. The name was Varka. No species listed, no other information. Just Varka. Doss had written one line with it. Find Varka in the upper market before noon and say that the old route is open again. She didn't know what that meant yet. She would find out when she found Varka. She woke fully at what the station clocks called early morning. The light in the corridor outside her room was still set to night cycle dim. She washed her face, checked her blade, drank water, and went out. The station was quieter at this hour, but not empty. It never fully went to sleep. There were always beings moving. Shift workers heading to the engine rooms, night traders packing up their stalls, the security drones rolling their slow rounds. She moved through level 3 and took the stairs instead of the lift. She had learned a long time ago that lifts trapped you. Stairs gave you choices. She was 3 floors down when she heard them behind her. There were 2 of them. Herrick, by the sound of their footsteps, long-legged, heavy, with that particular heel strike that Herrick made when they were moving with purpose. She didn't turn around, she just adjusted her pace and her route. On taking a turn that led through the goods storage corridor, longer, less direct, but wider, with more space to move. They followed. She turned again. They followed again. She stopped pretending she didn't know and turned around. They were big, both males, both young, with the lean, hungry look of Herrick who hadn't found steady work. Their ears were flat, and their eyes were bright with the particular excitement of beings who thought they had found easy prey. One of them had a long shock rod hanging from his belt. The other had his hands loose at his sides, claws slightly out. The one with the shock rod spoke first. His galactic standard was rough but clear. "Human, you've been asking questions in the hollow." Mara looked at him. She said nothing. "Dangerous questions," the other one added. His claws clicked together softly. "Who sent you?" she asked. The first one smiled. It was a wide smile, all teeth. All the way Herrick smiled when they felt certain. Doesn't matter. What matters is you need to stop asking and get back on your ship and go back to wherever soft humans come from. Mara looked at them both. She looked the way she always looked, calm, still, fully present. No panic, no anger, just attention. She had noted when she came in that the storage corridor had metal crates on both sides, stacked to about chest height. The Herrick with the shock rod was slightly in front of the other, in which meant any movement from the second one was going to be blocked for half a second by the first. The corridor was wide enough to move in, but not wide enough for 2 large beings to come at her side by side at full speed. She had also noted that the shock rod was on his left side, and the Herrick was right dominant. He held his body slightly right forward. He would reach across for the rod, which meant a half second of awkward movement before he had it ready. Half seconds were everything. "I'm going to keep asking my questions," she said simply, "and I'm going to walk out of this corridor the same way I walked into it. You can make that easy or hard. It's your choice." The first Herrick's smile got wider. "You're alone. You're one small human. What exactly—" She moved. Not at the one speaking, at the other one, the one with his hands loose because he was actually the more dangerous one. Talkers set up, quiet ones finished it. She went left and fast. I came inside his reach before his claws could extend fully, used her right elbow on the hinge of his jaw. Not a punch, an elbow, much harder, and felt him stagger back into the crates. She was already turning. The first Herrick had his shock rod halfway out. She caught his wrist with both hands, twisted in the direction a wrist was not supposed to go, and the rod hit the floor. Then she stepped behind him, got an arm across his throat from behind, and held it there. He was much bigger than her, yet he could have thrown her off with enough struggle, but a closed throat changes things quickly. In about 4 seconds, his hands, which had been clawing at her arm, slowed down. His legs went loose. She didn't choke him out completely. She held it just long enough for his vision to go gray, then released him and stepped back. He fell to one knee, coughing, his hands on the floor. The second Herrick was sitting against the crates, one hand on his jaw, blinking at her with unfocused eyes. And he would have a headache for 2 days, but nothing was broken. She picked up the shock rod from the floor. She turned it off and placed it on a crate next to the first Herrick, within his reach once he recovered. She didn't need it. "Tell whoever sent you," she said quietly, "that I'm still asking my questions. And if they want to discuss it with me, they know where I'm walking." She turned and walked away down the corridor. Her heart rate was slightly elevated. On her left arm had a fresh bruise where the second Herrick's initial swipe had caught her before she got inside his reach. She rolled her sleeve back, looked at it. Purple and spreading. Fine. She had been marked worse. She went back to the stairwell and continued down to the lower levels. By the time she reached the hollow, the morning shift change was beginning and the station lights were rising to day cycle bright. Doss was already there in the same corner, drinking something hot, looking like a being who had not slept either. He looked at her arm when she sat down. "I was warned the station was being watched," she said. "And yet you're here," he said. "And yet I'm here." She folded her hands on the table. "Who is Varka?" Doss looked at her carefully. His ears moved in that small way that meant he was deciding something. Then he leaned forward. "Varka," he said quietly, "is an Urlak elder. She lives in the upper market. She sells stone carvings. Yes, which is not actually her business. It's just what she does while she watches everything." He paused. "She has been on this station for 20 years. She has more pull with the Urlak checkpoint at Grid 6 than anyone alive. A word from her and every door opens." He paused again. "But she does not give words lightly. She doesn't like strangers. She especially doesn't like humans." Mara absorbed this. "Why especially humans?" Doss looked at the table. "Hey, because the ones who have come through here before you were not like you." She thought about that. "And what's the old route?" "Ah." Doss took a slow breath. "That is the part I have to tell you very carefully." The old route was a story that went back 30 years. Doss told it slowly, with his hands wrapped around his cup and his ears half flat. 30 years ago, before Varrock 9 had its current name, when it was still a rough waypoint with no official status, there had been a trade road through the outer veil. A long, quiet road that cut through Urlak territory and avoided all the major system checkpoints. It had been used by small traders, by families moving between systems, by beings who needed to move quietly and cheaply. No military, no syndicate. Just ordinary beings getting from one place to another. Then the syndicate had found it. They had used the old route to move cargo that could not be moved officially. Things that were illegal. Things that were alive and should not have been. Things that left marks on everyone they touched. They had moved through Urlak territory like they owned it, bribing where they could and burning what they couldn't bribe. Several Urlak who tried to stop them had been killed. Varka's brother had been one of them. After that, the Urlak shut the old route. Completely. They built the Grid 6 checkpoint. Nothing passed without their personal approval, and the syndicate found other roads. So when you say to Varka that the old route is open again," Doss said, "you are saying that the syndicate is using it again. You are telling her something she would want to know, something she has been watching for 30 years. Mara was quiet for a moment. "Is it actually open again?" Doss nodded very slowly. 3 ships in the last 2 months. I tracked them myself. They are running something through the old route again, past Grid 6's edge, using a gap in the Urlak scan coverage that opened up when one of their old relay buoys failed. He looked at her steadily. "Nobody has told Varka yet. They're afraid of her reaction." "I'm not afraid of her reaction," Mara said. "No," Doss agreed. "You're not afraid of much, it seems." She thought about the Harak in the storage corridor. She thought about her bruised arm and about the many other bruises and worse things she had collected over 8 months of following this trail. That she was not going to tell Doss that fear was something she felt every single day. Fear was not the same as being stopped by fear. She had decided a long time ago that she would feel it and keep walking anyway. It was the only way anything ever got done. She left the hollow and went to the upper market. The upper market was everything the lower levels were not. It was bright and open, and a wide circular space near the top of the station with panels in the ceiling that let in the faint blue light from the star outside. There were stalls with colored cloth and stalls with food smells, and a fountain in the center that had actual running water in it, which was a luxury on a space station. Families came here, children ran between the stalls. It felt safer than the rest of Varrock 9, though Mara knew that feeling was partly a lie. Everywhere had teeth if you knew where to look. She found Varka at a stall near the eastern wall. The Urlak elder was sitting on a wide, low seat, surrounded by stone carvings of many sizes. They were good carvings, detailed figures of animals and ships and patterns that Mara didn't know the meaning of. Varka herself was very large, even by Urlak standards. Her dark fur was streaked with gray, and her 4 arms moved with the slow certainty of someone who had no reason to hurry for anything. She was working on a new carving as Mara approached, drawing a small blade across a piece of pale stone with careful strokes. She did not look up when Mara stopped at her stall. "Human," she said. Her voice was deep and slow. "You want to buy something?" It was not a question. It was the thing she said to everyone who stopped. "I want to tell you something," Mara said. Now Varka looked up, her black eyes, the same deep black as all Urlak. I moved over Mara with a slowness that was not laziness. It was the opposite. It was the look of someone who saw very quickly and took their time because they could afford to. "Then tell it," she said. Mara looked at her steadily. "The old route is open again." The carving blade went still on the stone. The sounds of the market continued around them. Children laughing, vendors calling, the fountain running. But at this stall, time seemed to have stopped. Varka set down her blade. She set down her stone. She looked at Mara with those black eyes, and the weight in that look was something Mara could almost feel as a physical thing, pressing against her chest. "How do you know this?" Varka asked. "I tracked 3 ships," Mara said. 2 months. I have the data. Why are you telling me?" Mara held her gaze. "Because the beings using that route are the same ones I'm looking for. And I need to pass through Grid 6 to find them. I'm not asking for free passage. I'm offering information in exchange for a name at the checkpoint." Varka was silent for a long moment. Her 4 hands were still on the table beside her carvings. Her great chest moved slowly as she breathed. "You know what the Syndicate did on that route?" she said. It was not a question. "I know about your brother," Mara said, simply and quietly. "I'm sorry for it." Something moved through Varka's face. Not softness exactly, but a change. A small, deep shift, like a very large stone moving an inch. "Show me the data," Varka said. Mara set her palm scanner on the stall table and transferred the files. Varka had a small reader in one of her 4 hands and went through it quickly. Her expression did not change, but the air around her seemed to get heavier. Her breathing slowed further. When she finished, she looked up again. "This is 3 ships," she said. "You said 3 ships. These records show the routes, the timing, the scan gaps." She paused. "This is very careful work for one person." "I've had time to be careful." Varka looked at her for a long moment. Then she said, "What did they take from you?" Mara said nothing for a second. Then, "Someone. A person?" "Yes." Varka picked up her carving blade again. She turned the piece of pale stone over in 2 of her hands, while the other 2 rested on the table. She looked at the stone, but she was clearly not thinking about it. "I will give you a name at Grid 6, she said slowly. My name. You will say Varka sends this passage." She looked up again. "But you will do something for me first. There is a being on this station, a Drev information runner named Kethis, who has been collecting data on my family's movements. He works for the Syndicate. I want to know who he reports to. I want the name of his contact here on Verak 9. She paused. "Can you get that?" Mara looked at her. "Yes. You say it very easily." "I've done harder things this week." Varka looked at her for another of those long, weighing moments. Then something happened that Mara had not expected. The Urlak elder let out a long, slow breath that was almost something like a laugh. Not warm exactly, but real. "I heard about you," Varka said, "from the Urlak near the lift. He said a human woman made him step aside without a word or a weapon. She tilted her head slightly, in the Urlak way of asking a question. How? Mara almost smiled. Doss asked me the same thing. What did you tell him? That some things are older than thinking. Varka looked at her for a long time after that. Then she picked up her stone and her blade and went back to carving. Find Kethis, she said. Bring me the name. Then you will have your passage. Mara nodded once and turned to go. She had only taken 2 steps when Varka's deep voice came again, quiet but carrying. Human, she said. Whatever they took from you. A pause. I hope you get it back. Mara kept walking. She did not let herself feel those words too deeply right now. She couldn't afford it. But she held them, folded them up carefully, and put them somewhere safe. She had a Drev to find. Finding Kethis was not the hard part. Finding information on Varak 9 never was, if you knew how to ask and where to listen. Mara spent 3 hours moving through the station in a slow and quiet circle. The mid-level markets, the cargo processing halls, the fuel exchange near Bay 8. She didn't ask about Kethis directly. She asked about Drev workers on the station, about information runners, about who was new and who had been here long. She asked in 3 different languages, and she asked beings who had no connection to each other. Then she sat down in a noodle stall near the center ring, ate a bowl of something hot and orange, then put together what she had learned the way you put together a map from pieces. Kethis worked out of the cargo processing hall on level 2. He had been on the station for about 4 months, recent enough to not be known widely, long enough to have built up a pattern. He moved information between ships coming in from the outer systems and someone on the station. He collected data chips, copied them, passed them on. Standard syndicate work. Low risk, low profile, and effective. And she found him at his usual place, sitting at an access terminal near the cargo scanning machines, pretending to do routine logging work while actually running copy routines on the chips that passed through his area. He was small even for a Drev, with a pale green shell and mandibles that barely moved when he thought nobody was watching. He looked like exactly what he was trying to look like. Nothing interesting. Mara sat down at the terminal next to him. He didn't look up at first. Then he glanced sideways out of reflex. When he saw her, she watched something happen behind his compound eyes, a flash of recognition, which meant he had been given her description, and then something else, something he couldn't quite control, that made him want to move away from her. He didn't move. He was disciplined. But the want was there. Kethis, she said quietly, her eyes on the wall in front of them. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm not here to report you. And I just want one piece of information, and then I'm going to walk away and you're going to continue your day. He made a clicking sound low in his mandibles. I don't know what your... The name, she said. Your contact on this station. That's all. I don't need your whole operation. I don't need the chip data or the route logs. Just the name of the person you report to here on Varak 9. His mandibles clicked again. His shell made a slight creaking sound, which in Drev body language meant extreme tension. If I give you that, he said very quietly, I'm finished. When they find out, they won't find out from me, she said. And for what it's worth, she paused. The Syndicate is about to have much larger problems than one information runner on a mid-range station. Your contact is going to be very busy very soon. You might want to think about whether you want to be close when that happens. Kethis was quiet for a long moment. His compound eyes moved to her once and then away. She could see him calculating, the way small, clever creatures calculated when they were caught between 2 dangerous things. She was not threatening him. She was not promising him protection. She was simply giving him real information and letting him decide. His mandibles moved very slightly. Then he said a name. Just the name. Nothing more. He said it so quietly that she almost missed it. She filed it away. She stood up, nodded once at the wall, and walked out of the cargo hall. The name was Prell. She didn't recognize it, but when she brought it to Doss, who was, she was beginning to realize, an almost bottomless source of useful knowledge, he went very still for a moment and then pulled out his small reader with hands that were not quite steady. Prell, Doss told her, was a mid-level coordinator for the Syndicate's operations in this quadrant. He was based on Verac 9, but he moved between stations regularly. And he was not a violent man himself. He organized others. He handled the logistics of what moved and when and where. He was the kind of person who never got his own hands dirty but was responsible for a great deal of things that were very dirty. And he was on the station right now. Mara thought about this for a long moment. Then she went to Varka. The elder Urlak listened to everything without interrupting. She heard the name Prell, and her 4 hands went very still on her carvings. When Mara finished, Varka was quiet for a time that felt long and full. Then she stood up. Varka standing was a different thing from Varka sitting. She was enormous when she stood, tall and broad and carrying the kind of presence that did not need to announce itself. Several beings in the upper market nearby noticed her stand up and moved without thinking, creating space around the stall the way water moved around a stone. "I will speak to the station master," Varka said. "Prell will not leave this station quietly." She looked at Mara. "You have kept your part. I will keep mine." She reached under her work table and brought out a small token, a piece of carved stone on a cord, a symbol Mara didn't know. She held it out in one of her 4 hands. "Wear this," she said. "At Grid 6, show it to the checkpoint officer. They will know what it means. You will pass without question." She paused. "It also means something in any Urlak territory. If you are in trouble there and you show it, you will get help." Mara took the token. It was heavier than it looked. "Thank you," she said. Varka looked at her with those deep black eyes. "Thank me by finding what they took," she said, "and by making sure it cannot be taken again." Mara put the cord around her neck and tucked the token inside her jacket, against her chest. She went back through the upper market toward the main corridor, and the old familiar thing happened around her. Space cleared. A pair of Harak traders stepped aside. A large Urlak guard near the corridor entrance moved half a step back without looking at her, as though his body had reacted on its own. A group of Drev workers near the lift shifted to the wall. But something else was happening now, too. The prey species, the Feli, the movie, and the small, soft-bodied beings who normally pressed against walls and traveled in tight bunches, were doing something different. A movie child standing near the fountain watched her pass and didn't look away. A Feli trader behind his stall lifted his chin slightly as she went by. The young movie with the scar on her chin, the one who had warned her the night before, was standing near the corridor entrance. And when Mara passed, she gave that same small nod again. But this time it was slower and longer and meant something more. It meant, "We see you. We know what you are. We are glad you are here." Mara kept walking. She had a ship to get back to. She had cargo route maps to finalize and a jump plan to calculate and 11 days of hard travel ahead of her before she reached the outer veil. She had a stone token against her chest and a name she had been chasing for 8 months and a cold, quiet certainty in her bones that she was close now. Real close. But she did not let herself think about what she would feel when she finally found what the Syndicate had taken. That was for later, when it was done, when she had earned it. She stepped into the lift and the doors closed behind her. In the main corridor above, a Kreth guard said something to his partner in their own language. Translated plainly, it meant, "The human is heading for the docks." His partner asked, "Who is she?" The first one was quiet for a moment. And then he said, "I don't know her name." but she walks like she has already decided how everything ends. His partner thought about this and didn't answer because there wasn't anything to add. Down in the lower levels, in the hollow, Doss sat with his second cup of the morning and wrote a short message to a contact in the next system. The message said only, "The human Mara Voss passed through Verac 9. She is heading for the outer veil. If she comes through your station, do not get in her way. I am not saying this to protect her, I am saying it to protect you." He sent it and sat back and looked at nothing for a moment. Then he picked up his cup and thought, for the first time in several years, that something interesting might be happening in this part of space. On her ship in Bay 14, Mara ran her pre-flight checks and did not think about how it felt to finally be moving again. She thought about the route, the checkpoint, the name she was chasing, and the road ahead. Outside the station's thick metal walls, deep space waited, dark, cold, and full of everything she had left to do. She started her engines,